Evening. Welcome to School Committee for February 23rd, 2015. We will start with the approval of minutes. We have two different sessions, the joint meeting with advisory and the selectmen from February 5th and then February 12th. Would someone make a motion on the minutes from the 5th, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the joint meeting minutes of February 5th, 2015.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. February 12th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Hingham School Committee, February 12th, 2015. Thank you, Carol, for your assistance that evening.
No, it was great. It was great. No, thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna skip a couple things. So, but Brad is here. I saw Brad. Brad, come on up. How are you? Remind folks at home who you are. And
Live.
we're live. No, we're live from time to time. Sometimes we're taped. Sometimes we don't have the TV. It depends.
All right. Hello, my name is Brad Patterson. I'm a sophomore at Hingham High School. To start off, the Drama Club is entering the Drama Guild and will be performing this Saturday at Bourne. Also, the boys hockey has made it into the tournament. Also, girls basketball will be tomorrow night. The debate has been moved to this Wednesday at Bishop Fian. Polar plunge is this Saturday, the 28th, and my guess is that it will be at the bathing beach. If the harbor unfreezes and they remove most of the snow. Mock trial will be at Whitman Hanson this Friday at 1:30, and the college kickoff night will be March 10th. Also on March 10th, the 2015 Will McDonough writing contest will have the entries due by then, and the winner will receive a Kindle and be invited to an award ceremony. The My Favorite Teacher contest held by Nobles is also accepting entries, but only up to March 1st, and the local winner will move on to the regional contest and may win a $500 gift card, and the national winner will receive a $5,000 in cash, and $5,000 will also go to their school. The Green Team has started the DOT program, Do One Thing, where they have all of the school's years in the cafeteria, and you put your name down and one thing you're doing to stay green, and try to fill up the dot, and whichever class gets the most may win prizes. And also this Friday will be the drama play preview. That's it. Any questions or comments? Thank you.
Busy week.
Terrific. So 3.2 on your agenda has been moved to next week, and we'll talk about that more because it's been kind of a realignment of the budget voting, which it affects more than just us. It affects the other departments that advisory is reviewing as well. We'll skip communications because Dot will come in a few minutes. Questions and comments? Anyone in the audience? Anything not on the agenda? No? Okay. We'll skip superintendent's report for now, and we'll go right. Actually, we're gonna skip the budget, and we're gonna move on to the industrial technology program review. Paul is with us, right? Nice to see you. I think we have the whole department. Everyone is here, right? E-show and terrific.
Well, if you want to, we can move the mic probably.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Joe. So for the folks at home, we have program reviews of all of our departments, typically on an every 4-year rotating schedule. So this is actually my second time seeing a program review for industrial technology. And so it's always fun to see how the program has evolved, what changes are made, and new and returning faculty, and it's nice to see a lot of returning faculty, as always. Always look forward to these reports. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. I'm Paul Pulowski. I wrote this report with Ryan Chauzier. This is the Industrial Technology Program Review. I'd like to read our statement of philosophy. The Industrial Arts, the Industrial Technology Program in the Hingham Public Schools meets the diverse needs of all students by developing better understanding and a hands-on perspective of an ever-changing technological society. The aim of the Industrial Technology Department is to develop an appreciation and knowledge of a variety of tools, materials, and processes, as well as the development of problem-solving, critical thinking, and independent learning skills for a lifelong learner. I'd like to introduce you to the staff. We have Doug Baker. Doug teaches at the middle school. We have Bob Kenny. Bob Kenny teaches at the middle school and the high school. Okay. We have Ryan Chauzier behind me. He teaches at the high school. Ryan Faherty teaches at the high school. And I teach at the high school in the Depot Building number 12. This is our student enrollment. The enrollment continues to be strong at both the middle school and the high school. There's been a lot of interest in the classes in the middle school that leads to the high school as well. The number of requests for our classes is stronger than they've ever been, especially at the middle school. In addition, this year, this is for the last 3 years, these numbers here, but this year we just started an introductory program for the 6th graders into technology education. So the next time we're here, we'll be showing the numbers of the entire 6th grade class that everyone will be seeing Mr. Kenny. We offer a variety of courses ranging from construction technology to graphic design and photography to technical drawing, consumer automotives, power technology, woodworking, and then technology education as well at the middle school. Okay. When we develop our curriculum, we like to keep in mind, we like to develop problem-solving skills, engage in a design activity that would simulate critical thinking, develop an understanding of technology and engineering, like to engage in teamwork, have kids work together in groups, also with hands-on real work experiences. We also explore career opportunities, and we embrace lifelong learning skills. One of the things that we're really getting deeper and deeper involved in is we're currently updating our curriculum with standard-based lessons and units, and that is aligned with the new frameworks. So that's a lot of what we're working on to the whole department. Okay. At the middle school, currently wood technology and technology education are both very popular. Many of the students will choose similar electives at the high school, more advanced. And the wood technology projects range from a computer-operated carved box to other projects that might include a cherry picker or a cranberry picker. And also technology education, it's part of the Mass State frameworks. We are implementing lessons that include the engineering design process. A lot of that is involved in the STEM, which is being introduced in a lot of the science right now. And we do this to bring on more skills with both hand and power tools. Okay. At the high school, our electives are very popular. Graphic design and photography. That was old Chloe there.
You might see my kids, I guess. I feel like who knew?
We like kids.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
That's why he's here. Graphic design and photography enrollment is approximately 60% female. Our overall enrollment in our electives, it continues to rise with the female enrollment. We're approximately 33% throughout the whole department. Classwork ranges from project-based to technology engineering focus. Trace's student enrollment continues at 100% the last 3 years. Another thing I meant to mention on that last one, as well as updating our curriculum with more, engineering-based, we're also been updating our website to show where all our students work. We're having the photography kids take pictures, and we're putting them onto our website for more of the public. And you can go online. I think the website is inside your packet. Just this year, the Hingham students won 30 awards for their artwork for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. This year, we had 5 gold keys, 9 silver keys, and 16 honorable mentions. In the industrial arts and industrial technology, we received more awards than many of the surrounding towns. So we've actually got more and more awards each year. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah. We've won 102 in 6 years.
Yeah.
No one's counting.
Definitely not me.
Yes, someone is. Let's see. Now what's interesting is people who won the gold awards, they're going on to, like, we just got an email today where they're going to be competing throughout. It's a national awards that are coming up. And some of the things that we did bring here tonight are some of the works that have received these gold keys and silver keys. We can show you a little bit afterwards. We have teamed up with the art department, where we're involved with a lot more local shows. As you can see, the South Shore Student and Teacher Show, the Scholastic Arts Awards in Boston. It's a statewide competition. The Advanced Student Art Show, have that at the Hingham High School, room 103. The Town Hall Art Show will be formally for the Fine Arts right here at the Town Hall. And the Young Artist Show at Second Parish Church. And the South Shore Arts Center for Young Artists Show at the South Shore Arts Festival. And what I would like to do is, I'd like to state that we feel very fortunate of the backing that we get from Dot, Ellen, and John with helping us updating our equipment and our computers. As you can imagine, the computers go out of date pretty quick, and our equipment that we've updated over the years has been pretty substantial. We've also had a lot of help from the HEF grants. It's allowed us to purchase a lot of equipment both at the high school and at the Traces program. So again, thank you all for your support. And at that, we'll open up to questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. That's great. No, obviously, we've been spending a lot of time over the last couple of years talking about technology ourselves, and working on a major initiative to get more and improve technology throughout the whole district. So we'll certainly continue, I think, to support your efforts in that regard, and to the extent hardware, software needs to be updated on a regular basis. I'm sure you work with Joe Andrews regularly on that, and I know that we have a significant line item in our capital budget request this year that will address a number of technology needs. So that's great. Just one question. I noticed in the report, in the areas of concern, particularly for the high school, talking about the floor. So you're looking for, let's see. Right.
Well, what would right now it's
the wood shop floor is concrete.
It's concrete.
Can there be any kind of can you do an epoxy paint coating?
You probably could. We'd like to maybe find something that would help with some of the sound as well.
Yeah.
Because the old wood shop had hardwood flooring in it,
Yeah.
and so it helped to deaden the sound.
Sure.
So now when you have concrete floor, walls, and ceiling, especially in the wood shop, so something like that would be interested in. And I did want to state that as far as the middle school, there are really no areas of concern there besides really the final, and we're very happy with the space.
Good. I'm glad you are.
I have a question. So
Sure.
you mentioned on the dust-free and the finishing up for dust-free.
Yep.
Is that something that you are working on yourselves to create, or?
We are, yes, we are working on that, and again, with the last layout that we had for the wood shop, we had a very nice finishing room, you know, with an exhaust to vent it out. In the wood shop right now, we have a smaller classroom when you come in, and then the larger shop that you walk into. So towards the back of the classroom area, would like to maybe erect a wall going across and maybe put a vent going out the back. We've, you know, spoke with Paul Field on that, and we're looking to move forward with it.
That's something you would do in-house?
Yes.
Well, and thank you for mentioning Hingham Education Foundation. I know they have been generous, and they are a great team player
You know,
for this
talking about
department in
keeping track of
particular.
Ryan,
I know.
Ryan, all of us,
Very, very nice to me.
very, very generous.
Well, they're very. I can speak from sitting in on those. They get very jazzed to hear what your plans and, you know, what your vision is, and it's exciting, and our kids benefit from it. So it's a great thing.
It really is, and just kind of a little bit of an update. For instance, one of the things that Ryan has written a grant for, it's we do the T-shirts every year, and we've always been doing screen print. And before we were cutting by hand, and we went to cutting by laser, and now we have a printer that prints the T-shirts. So
We do that for all the different departments and activities in the school, which
Yep.
is phenomenal.
And we also work with a lot of outside groups. We work with the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts. Over this past year, a young man's getting his Eagle. We work with the Girl Scouts on a project. I think it was a silver. Not quite sure what that was, but and we're working with the museum with Scott from Bear Cove Museum. The projectiles that you see there, that's just what it looks like. That black and yellow topped. Scott found out behind some of the big depot buildings a container that would hold 9 of them that used to go on the ships out in the back river. So he asked us to make some replicas that will go inside this container that he has. And he was telling us that those were used for practice back in the day, for target practice, and that they weigh about 150 pounds each when they're really made. So the container that he has a bottom piece where you'd put 9 of them in. You have a top that bolts on, and then they were loaded on the ships and stacked up on top of each other.
I got a lot of great things there. I see something very familiar. So I think, Doug, I have a daughter in 7th grade who takes your class, and we've got some nice things that she's done and brought home. I see the cutting board over that looks familiar, very familiar. It's great. It's great. Any other questions or comments from folks? Isn't it awesome? It's awesome.
I'd like to thank you for the participation at the Young Artist Show at Second Parish. My wife Joyce and our friend Jane Shute are the co-chair of that, and they've run that for years. And I'm very familiar with the program myself. They don't trust me to take the artwork up, but I'm on the duty section to take the artwork down. So thank you for
Well, that's good,
participating.
and that would be more directly Ryan, and he's working with the art department. We're trying to do more collaborations, you know, interdepartment.
Anything else? Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
just reiterate, PTO's been very supportive, and we certainly appreciate that, all the PTOs in all the schools, but that's great. I'm
Great
sure they'll
job.
continue to be. Thank you very much.
I know.
Nice stuff. Really nice stuff.
Right here, this one that gold, yeah, we can pass this around.
We got all the time in the world. Nothing but time.
I don't recommend eating them. Candy bars.
That looks like a familiar
Yeah.
portrait.
Oh, wow, look at that. Yeah, that's great.
Wow, this is neat.
Oh, it's a gumball machine, yeah.
Yeah.
That is part of we do the design process.
That's great.
These ones here, one of the ones.
No kidding.
Those two?
What do they make? What
Go.
kind of is it?
Thank you.
Is it like wet and then?
It's just, you see, looks different colors because it's the way the grain's going a little different. Like,
Yeah.
see right there?
Yeah.
You have the grain going 90 degrees
Right.
each way.
Yeah. Are they little strips wrapped around this way, or are they
It's just
hollowed out?
one big flat one that gets
One big
hollowed
thing?
out.
Wow.
Like kind of candy.
Very nice. Oh,
That is incredible.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Avocado too. That is so.
is it gum?
Tell me about the fake candy.
Yeah, you can see the.
So what's inside of them? Oh. Oh, I get it.
Oh yeah, it smells like chocolate.
They create themselves. So.
My daughter loves
Thank you so much for bringing it. It's awesome. Yeah. You do a great job too with that.
That's a gumball machine.
A gumball machine. I like it.
Look at this turning. Look at this. I guess so. You know, the graphic arts. I'm dating myself. But our younger daughter finished the high school in 93. Back at the middle school, was one of two girls in industrial arts side. And it absolutely
Yeah.
dictated her ultimate career. Without question. Positively without question. And some of the things that she did at the high school, people have asked to buy them.
Bigger one.
Yeah, I mean, do you still make ceramic blueberry pie? I'm going to tell you something. We've had people, because we kept it. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great. Thank you for bringing everything.
Emily's first job when she finished school, and she was in charge of the designs, the visuals in the
Okay, we should probably continue because we are live. And I've just learned that there are perhaps more viewers watching this evening than regularly.
I wonder why.
So we, I think, are getting very good ratings this evening.
Must be because your department's here.
Yeah,
Good boost, good boost.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Careful, careful.
Okay, while our industrial technology folks pack up, and we thank them again for sharing their wares with us.
Yeah, be
Have a good night,
careful
gents.
with those. Thank you.
So, getting back to business. So before we go back to the regular agenda, so obviously folks in town have been aware of the snow and some things that have happened as a result of the snow. So now that the email has gone out and all the folks at home have been advised that there will in fact be school tomorrow in all 5 schools, but not Plymouth River. So for those of you who do not have internet access or weren't able to get the email, I know there was one woman who called earlier and was led to believe that there would be school, and that was before there was a change in circumstances that were really beyond our control. And unfortunately, we don't have information for that woman to call her back. So if she is watching, the message is that there's school in 5 schools tomorrow, but not Plymouth River. So, Dot, did you want to give an update on our situation here?
Well, let me just add to the message for the mysterious caller. Just to be sure that we don't have a child on a very cold morning out stranded somewhere, we've asked Patrick Cunningham, our transportation supervisor, to do his Plymouth River routes and to pick up, if it's an older child, if anyone is at home, send the child back. If it's a younger child, bring the child to the building. I've asked Chuck and his secretary to be near the door so that any other parent who might be dropping off or any child brought by a bus will be taken care of. This mom called just as we were receiving the news that we didn't have the paperwork that we needed to get the school open today. And I told her that there was going to be school. Thought that to be the case. Now there isn't. So if anyone knows of a mom who doesn't have internet access, who may have called to get the message that it was school, there is not. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that that no child might be left either at a bus stop or at the building. And Ellen, as we move on, Ellen can move out and also notify a radio station just with the message that there is no school at Plymouth River in Hingham. So.
Right, and so let's back up a little because we're just coming back from break. I know some folks were traveling. For those of you who don't know all the details and what has happened, last Thursday we had an occurrence at Plymouth River where apparently the weight of the snow led to essentially what amounted to yeah, I would say some twisting and bending of some of the steel structure that is under the roof, in between the roof and the drop ceiling, mainly in the library, an area in the main office, and a small area in the hallway adjacent to the office. It's if you can imagine, and I have a picture, I don't know if you can get this, probably can't get this if you can zoom, but if you can imagine 2 parallel steel beams and then triangular structures in between. And so you can see that these are bent. They're not the shape of the other ones. So that's essentially what some of them look like. And as a result of that bending, there was some sagging of the interior structure just in a few certain areas. Immediately, the building commissioner was called, engineers were called to do an assessment of the building, and then proceeded to do assessments of all of the buildings. Quickly mobilized our custodians and other crew to start removing snow from the affected areas so that temporary shoring could be put up. We then contracted with other crews from out of town to start removing snow from all of the building roofs of all the schools. DPW was of great help lending their heavy-duty equipment, which was necessary. We had cranes brought in that helped at PRS and particularly at the high school for a couple of days. And the main reason why schools were closed today was to allow those efforts to continue. We had heavy-duty equipment, we had the crews available. Some of those crews were working through the night, over the weekend, and we wanted to take advantage of that manpower and that equipment to get to all of the schools and remove as much of the snow as we possibly could. So the shoring at Plymouth River, the temporary shoring efforts have been completed. An engineer has inspected, and it was a matter of kind of final sign-off from the building commissioner and the paperwork being finalized that was delayed late this afternoon into this evening. We weren't able to get finalized, and that's what caused us to have to make the decision not to open Plymouth River tomorrow. It's really due to safety. Obviously, we want to make sure that anybody going into the building is completely safe, and until the building commissioner can sign off on that, we can't do that. So the hope is that that happens sometime tomorrow morning, and we're in a position to open the following day. But there'll be more on that from Dot tomorrow. All the other schools will open. Efforts to remove that snow have been tremendous. I was talking to Paula earlier, said really did a great job there. I really can't say enough about Katie Hartman's efforts. I saw her at different times over the weekend. I was at PRS on Friday and at different times on Sunday. And she was working virtually round the clock. I think Saturday night into Sunday, she left at midnight and came back at 5 a.m. She was coordinating efforts with the custodians, coordinating efforts with the out-of-town contractors that we hired, coordinating efforts with the DPW to get the heavy equipment that they were very happy to help us with, and we were pleased to have that help. But really did a tremendous effort, was organized, was professional, kept Dot and John and Paul Field advised at all times, and really did a tremendous job of handling what was a huge undertaking. So I really can't say enough about the work that she's done. I'm really proud, and she's doing a terrific job in a new position that was created for her, and she's just doing a great job. So very appreciative of that. I don't know, Dot, John, if you had anything else to add about what's been going on.
No, I mean, in the email message that I did just send out, deleted, and I know a lot of people will be upset about that, but hopefully people will be understanding that we had to wait till we had the information. However, I think in the message I added that very good news is that although we will not be able to use the library a while because they need to put up some more permanent but still temporary shoring in the area that's impacted. There's no damage at all to any books, to any papers on the wall, to any furniture, to any computers, because the roof didn't actually cave in. There was no exposure of anything in that library to the elements. So that's good news. And so as we proceed with a final repair, which likely will happen next summer, you know, books will need to be moved and packaged up and all of that, but there's been no damage because there was no exposure to elements. And even the folks who worked there were very careful. And as a matter of fact, late on Saturday night, I went out into the corridor and Katie had the men, our own custodians, washing the floors in the other two wings. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, when the school opens, it's got to be clean, and they could be doing this while everybody else is doing whatever they needed to be doing with the shoring." So we're very happy about that. And you know, we had inspections done at all of the schools, and there were no other structural issues. But since we were removing so much of the snow at Plymouth River, and since safety understandably is such a big issue, and equity is a big issue, really was important for me to feel that we gave the other buildings the same degree of diligence that we did in removing the snow. As well, the winter isn't over yet. And so if we had only removed a minimal amount to be sure that we met whatever the loads were, and we had more snow, or worse even, we had rain, then we'd be back in even more trouble than we had been in before. So really, to be prudent about the future, this is going to be a costly thing. If you haven't seen the snow removal process from roofs, you cannot even imagine the amount of work that it is. I had a parent who wrote me and said, well, I removed the snow from my house. And, well, you know, our building's 176,000 square feet at Plymouth River, 91 or so thousand feet at East School. So these are big roofs, and so you can shovel it over, push it over, throw it over in a bag, but then it lands on the ground and it lands in front of the window or in front of the door or blocking the walkway. And bobcats have to remove it from there to another place at Plymouth River to the driveway. And then a front-end loader has to come and move it from the driveway to a place where it can be moved to a truck. And then a truck has to take it. So if you think of every single shovelful of snow is really touched, if you will, multiple times to accomplish this. It's an extraordinary effort. And, you know, for people who think that every time we have an inch of snow we should be clearing roofs, you would not think that much longer if you didn't see this process. So anyway, a lot of hard work and a lot of disruption to kids and so on.
that you wish you had removed snow?
No, I'm saying that there are many people who say, well, I don't understand why you just don't remove the snow every time there's a small storm.
Well, I can
And
understand that, but I mean, we had that building in the center of town collapse on Monday,
Oh, yeah, right.
and then this was
Yeah.
10 days later, and you had a storm in between. And, I mean, I guess I'd like to know, what is the actual process? What's the decision when we start going there? And like you talk about the snow being touched in 3 times, everyone's doing that in their neighborhood. You're taking, snow from your
Yeah,
driveway,
exactly.
your sidewalk, your
I'm
roofs.
just saying, when you look at the magnitude of it, we have buildings, our elementary buildings have 3 custodians each. This town hall has 3 custodians, and, we have an issue here. Snow removal last week, leak in the senior center is closed again today. So it's a challenge. So it's the magnitude of the storm. So when we say what would we typically do, there is no typical for this series of events. But what we do when we have snow, more than a few inches, is we do get up on the roofs. And we try to be sure that we're within what load capacity, there's a load capacity for each of the roofs. And you want to stay within that. So what do? Well, we knock down drifts that we may see, that kind of thing. We make sure that the snow is removed from around the air handling equipment, because that can present challenges of another sort. And most importantly, we make sure that the roof drains, and there are many of these roof drains on the roof, are free. And there's not snow clogging them, because the minute the snow begins to melt from underneath, then the melting snow becomes water that can pool on the roof and add weight. And that was one of the issues actually at the middle school, that once snow was removed from the middle school, there was a lot of ponding of water. We have the old middle school, I'm sorry, thank you. And so those are the typical things that we do to try to manage it. My belief is that the last storm, which was predicted to be much less than 16 inches, added 16 inches. In addition to that, we had more snow during the week, a couple inches one night, a couple inches the other night. And so at that point, trying to get additional personnel in that can handle that magnitude of a task is a challenge. So, looking back, it's easy to say, well, you should have removed the snow 2 weeks before. In fact, at Foster, the week before vacation, Katie felt that because Foster had a wooden structure under the roof, we try to be very careful about those. So Foster Gym is one of those, not the whole building, but the gym, and as well that the overhang, as I call it, at Plymouth River. I'm not sure what the canopy or the overhang. That's a wooden structure, so we are also careful about those. So we do a lot of due diligence. I don't think, had we known in advance that we were going to have however many inches of snow we had, I think we would have planned, well, at this point, we'll remove the snow, and then we'll do it again if we need to. But we didn't know any of that in advance. So
I think, if I remember correctly, when we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about Katie having crews up on the roofs every day, going from various
doing
buildings.
those things.
Right. So it wasn't like
Clearing snowfall,
Right.
checking, clearing the drains, clearing the mechanical units, moving the drifts, the high drifts. That's a protocol that she put in place and was doing after each
Yes,
snowfall.
I think it's important for people to recognize that
Absolutely.
it didn't just start with, oh my goodness,
And in
we had a problem, so
particular-
we'll start doing that.
And in particular, with respect to the new middle school, I saw email correspondence. We had the structural engineer give an opinion about snow load at the middle school after that initial blizzard in late January, and say, oh no, it's this much, and it doesn't seem to be a concern. The snow load is X, and the other thing, Annie, you mentioned the Lincoln Building. The Lincoln Building was a much older building. It was already tagged for demolition, so I don't think you can compare that.
Raising the awareness
Yeah.
being all the media. And I just asked what the process was.
Yep.
The other thing, Andy, too, is
You know.
that there were three-day storms in 3 weeks.
Right.
And then in the 4th week, when we were saying we're going to get up on the roof and clear stuff, there was a 4th storm. Fortunately, it didn't last another 3 days. They're just... You can't remove snow in a big way. I mean, we're actually going to have crews still around up on, touching up some other areas in the schools over the next couple of days. But you can't remove snow and have school at the same time either. So there was no time.
But the town, we have to work together with the town, and do very well with the DPW folks. So the first 2 days after any storm, there's a certain series of events. One is that the major roads get cleared. Second is that we get attention to our parking lots and the areas we can't plow. For people at home, we have pickup trucks, and they can clear around the immediate building. We do not have sidewalk plows, a good time to mention that. We do not have sidewalk plows, the town has two. But that's later on in their queue of the things to do. So it's things like get the major roadways free and clear, open up the schools to make sure that we have access to the buildings and that we have, importantly, an emergency lane around the buildings. Then it's clear areas like the square, and then snow plows, sidewalk plowing falls further down the list. So while I think we acted very prudently with this series of events, now that we know such a thing could occur, I think there are things that I think we can do differently. I mean, I've lived in this town for 76 years. There has never, ever been an event like this, or a series of events so close to it. That has never happened. So I think it's certainly not in anyone's possible conception that such a thing could occur. Well, now we know it's occurred once. May not occur again in my lifetime, but it could occur again. So now what I would say we do forward is we develop a new protocol. And the new protocol might say, as soon as there is a foot, whatever it would be, we would consult all the load information we have. Whenever there's this amount of snow, we will remove it all to protect ourselves against future storms, rain or snow that could come. But this was
90 inches of snow.
yeah, and who would ever have dreamed of that? And as with many things, it's fine to say, well, we should be prepared for anything. You know, the practical reality of having funds to prepare for anything and having 10 custodians at each elementary so they can do the shoveling and not get worn out. Nobody is going to do that. Doesn't mean we say do nothing, but we never staff for. MSBA is a good example. They don't build for maximum capacity, you know, and people aren't going to staff for events that are rare, and not just rare in this case, but never happened before. So we always learn things that we can do differently. Could we make a recommendation, for example, that there be more sidewalk plows? That would help. But you know what? Sidewalk plows, because people are very concerned about that, understandably so. But you know, to have more sidewalk plows, we'd also have to have more personnel. Because the reason they don't do the plowing right away is the personnel are driving the trucks that DPW often has. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what resources we have. And we have...
On this scenario you just gave, you said you waited for the town. Why didn't you consider about going to private contractors earlier? Because you said you work with the resources of the town.
Yes.
The town's main objective is first the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Then our number one priority is the parking lots.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, why didn't you think about, with, as you said, in the 76 years you lived here, we never had 90 inches of snow. Why didn't you think about, and I'm playing devil's advocate, but why didn't we think about going to a private contractor then to remove the snow on the roofs?
Had we known there was going to be another storm right around the corner, that's what I'm saying. We now know this can happen. And so perhaps we would have tried to get resources earlier. Understand as well that everybody was looking for resources.
We actually
You know,
did.
I have some peer superintendents who literally lost a roof. Weymouth, for example, was out the 2 days before vacation, and they still were working with a contractor as late as tonight, and today their high school and their 2 middle schools were closed for the same reason. That the job, because they're big schools, as we have big schools, is slow and tedious. And that's why I'm saying that what we need is, now that we know something like this can happen, we need to perhaps work with a contractor and not wait till we get to that maximum load and say, when we get to, you know, 5 inches below what the maximum load is, then we will clear the roofs no matter what. And it will be a very expensive process and very time consuming, and likely would require the closing of school. I mean, a lot of things to consider. And then if nothing happened, people would say, why on earth did you do that? But we would be protected. But at least we have a basis for making some decisions.
And we actually did look for a contractor, and we did find one before the vacation week, that provided 10 guys, but what we've had up there is 50 guys or more in the course of a day. We didn't have an army of guys. So, we were looking.
So in that regard, and it's been publicized that the town is going to has spent already over $1 million to clean the roads and with DPW and whatever. Do you have a guesstimate, just so people understand that this isn't just something you would do
I'm guessing $30,000 or $40,000 a day.
a day?
$75 an hour per person. Overnight shifts.
So we're talking about somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 to do this.
I think
Could-
when it
could
comes
be.
in, Dennis, I think
Yeah.
that's the range
Okay.
that I'm going to be in by the time all is said and
I don't know if I
done.
have an
Yes.
exact number, but to
Right.
your point, clearly we need to have a contingency plan. I think that's what you're talking about, Doc. It sounds perfectly sensible. But on the other hand, like you say, you have to weigh and measure a $200,000 expense or whatever it's going to be versus what
Right.
what the potential.
I mean, we've literally had
liability
armies of people
is. Yeah, no.
on, and it takes an army.
That possibility, I mean, tonight we're gonna talk more about budget, and we're nipping and tucking everywhere. And should we next year try to budget up an extra $100,000 in case we get snow? No one is gonna go for that. They're gonna say, we'll see what happens, and if you fall up short, then come see us for a reserve fund transfer. That's the way it works in town. You can't budget for something you don't know is gonna
I
happen.
understand, and I think, having been one of those people that was looking for somebody, as you all know, 2 weeks ago, you say, like you say, what you have to do on a pitched roof versus a flat roof and whatever, and get in a way, but, if a house costs $1,000 or $1,500, people can imagine what it is to do 6 buildings that are obviously,
And our buildings are large.
Right.
There are towns near us that have 3 schools, and perhaps they're smaller buildings, and it's not the massive job that it is here. So,
John, on Saturday last, I was up on the roof with Katie at Plymouth River and was just overwhelmed by the size of the roof structure, as well as the number of people that were up there. My question is there ever any heavy equipment, big heavy snow blowers? I mean, there were people just shoveling snow.
They did have snow blowers going.
I mean, there's sleds, you
didn't see
can use sleds sometimes, you can use snow blowers. I mean, I did use a snow blower. The Plymouth River roof is a very difficult roof. For one, just with all the jogs in it and, those aisleways that are recessed about, 10 feet, the 2 halls, they have pitch roofs, so it's very,
You're talking about the sidewalk
yeah.
snow blowers. Are they making equipment specifically to?
Nothing I've ever seen that. I think we'd all have them if they existed.
Because that's what you have up on Plymouth River.
Right. You just use a snow blower, a light one, and you set it up like 4 inches or so. That's,
or they shovel it onto a big piece of plastic and dump it over the side, or
Yeah.
they shovel just with ordinary shovels, or they use these sleds that way you can push it. Because imagine if you're shoveling from the middle, you got to get it to the end to flip it over.
The sleds are really good if it's all one level roof, but if you have multiple level roofs.
I would say too, as having gone through the old middle school issue with the shoveling, that was easy shoveling. That was a flat roof that had very little infrastructure on it, all one level. So that was very easy. Move it over to the edge, dump it over the edge, and then the heavy town equipment came and pushed it all away. But there was a place to push it. That's the problem we had at Plymouth River. It's very narrow around the back of that building, and so it's an incredible amount of work. And do I think anybody dropped the ball on this? No. If we knew what was going to happen, then we would have acted differently. But we had no reason to think ever that what has happened happened. But we've learned from that, and we'll put a plan in place that.
I'd like to know what's going to happen going forward. I understand the work's been done, the building has been shored up,
Yes.
and we are ready to let the children in.
Yes.
So, we don't have,
Tomorrow morning,
We have a statement. There are a number of people that are involved. You have to have the person who does the shoring has to be a certified person. And you have to have certification that all of that stuff has been done properly to take care of the loads. And then we have the building commissioner who is involved. And then we have the engineer who dealt with the loads on the roof and gave us the advice of what needed to be moved where. And when you are actually removing the snow, you don't go over here and shovel it all from one place and cause an imbalance. So you remove like a foot overall, and then you go back and you move, so that in the meanwhile, underneath in the building, there are the same kind of metal posts right now that were at the middle school, which can be twisted. So as you remove the load from the roof, the snow load from the roof pops up again. And then you have the beams that are kind of dangling, and they need to be tightened up. And so all night long you have the shoring company in one place, the snow removal people coordinated in another piece, and they tighten it up until it doesn't need to be tightened anymore. And so there are a lot of people that need to sign off. Somebody needs to sign off that the shoring was installed correctly. Someone else needs to sign off that the appropriate load now exists, or you're below that on the roof, and the building commissioner needs to sign off as well.
So where are we on the sign-offs? I'd like to know exactly who signed off where.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's documentation from two engineers that we're waiting for that we're going to have in the morning. Number one is the engineer that designed and inspected the shoring that was installed by the shoring contractor. He has provided documentation late this afternoon, this evening, which wasn't quite sufficient. It's being revised. We should have that in the morning. That will meet the building commissioner's requirements.
Even though it said that the building was safe for occupancy and we were going to move forward on that
But
basis.
it didn't address the three areas that were required, so it needs to address the three areas. So that's going to be revised. We'll have that in the morning. The second piece of documentation is from Gail, who, as a structural engineer, did the initial assessment of the building and provided the report, which you all got a copy of, that has a bullet point list of things that need to be completed. They need to provide a certification that they've inspected, and in fact those items have been completed. Now Gail was there today, but the snow wasn't quite finished being removed. They need to come back in the morning, confirm that all of those bullet points have been completed, provide a written certification. Those two pieces of paper, documentation, to the building commissioner, and then the building commissioner will deem the building ready for occupancy.
Hopefully he was out ill today. There was a substitute, and so hopefully he will be there in the morning.
So we're communicating with the building commissioner, and he's
Yes.
aware of how important
He is.
this is to get our children back to school.
We spoke, and I apologize, Mike, if you're watching, you're probably not, but I called Mike Clancy at home. He was ill today. Rick Wakeham served in his place today and did the inspection, but Mike has confirmed exactly what it is that he needs in order to deem the building ready for occupancy.
And the structural engineer and the shoring engineer are aware of the items that they need to have in order to make the building commissioner
Yes.
happy. Okay.
But that's why we started the meeting late this evening. We were on the phone dealing with just that issue.
So we feel fairly confident that we'll get the paperwork in the right order from those two engineers.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe all the work has been completed. It's just a matter of the paperwork and the final sign-off to be ready for occupancy on Wednesday.
Okay.
Andy?
You done, Carol?
Yes, thank you.
John, just out of curiosity, you talked about an army of people and teams and everything. Is there a requirement that where the people come from and working? I mean, I just think about like the hockey team does that annual cleanup of doing lawn care and everything, or the leaves. Can we just hire the high school kids to get up on
They
the
have to
roof?
be insured contractors.
Yeah.
They gotta have liability insurance, workers comp, all
I'm just
that.
making
so,
sure.
So
I
they
mean,
no, we
because
can't
there's all those other places
we just
hiring-
can't take people. That would be too risky for the town. So
In fact, when I was there on Friday, I think we were waiting for...
I mean, a lot of kids are making a fortune just shoveling other people's stuff.
We were waiting for insurance certificates to come over.
Yeah. Keep them on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, snow's that high, it's not helpful.
Well, you could walk off the roof at Plymouth River, just go down a snowbank, but
Straight off. I was up there yesterday, and you see the front loaders moving around the building, and you don't really think that there's much going on. And then you come up on the roof, and all of a sudden, there's 35 guys moving snow. You know, we really had, and we had Cape Cod, I forget what their full name is.
Cape Cod Roofing and
We had them overnight, Saturday
Yeah.
and Sunday. We had crews around the clock. There were people moving snow, you know, constantly.
yeah, they got that to the
Plymouth River was designed, in my opinion, they had a committee design the roofs, and everybody got a part of a roof. You had about with their pet design. It was the 60s.
So, Dr. Gallo, just since we're on this, since PRS is not opening tomorrow, they'll have to make up one day. Do you envision that? Like, there's a lot of questions going on, so why don't you just maybe talk about the whole process of the makeup days and stuff?
Well, we started to talk about that before, and we were going to talk about that
Okay.
next meeting.
I think there's so many people asking the questions. I mean, I
Yeah,
just want,
I
just your formal, just, you know, from your point of view of what.
Well, first of all, we talked about making a decision at the meeting of the 9th, but we're going to discuss tonight whether or not we would meet on the 9th. However, we are now going to meet on
Next
the
week.
2nd.
Yeah.
Because it really is important to make the decision sooner rather than later, because you rule out some options the longer that you wait. So we certainly need to do that. I can tell you though, apart from the decision, there are only a handful of options. You know, we can go to school right through the end of June, and there are pluses and minuses, mostly minuses, with each of those options. There are no pluses.
What day are we supposed to get?
The 24th. Now, but then at Plymouth River, it would either be the 25th, or they would need to get out, make up another day. The options are limited. Continue to go to school in June, go to school on a couple Saturdays, go to school, eliminate all or some of April vacation, eliminate a holiday such as Good Friday, which quite honestly has been the most popular option among the many suggestions that parents made to me. We don't need to make up all the days that we've missed. You know, in my best of worlds, we would get ourselves back to the 22nd. So that would, at this point, mean somehow coming up with 2 extra days that we make up, because I don't think the 22nd of June is too late to get out. So I met with the principals today, and they have some strong feelings about what they think. I won't share those now because they need to be part of what the school committee's thoughts are as well. Under communications, did you mention the letter?
I didn't mention it, but
Okay.
we've been advised that the teachers union wants to talk bargain over how we make up the snow days. So that those bargaining sessions have to be scheduled, and we'll be
And actually, meeting with Alec on Wednesday, Alec and Tom Melanson on Wednesday, to see if we can get that underway. The sooner the problem is the timeline for that. And I had talked with Alec even before that notification came of soliciting from his membership some ideas. And so we want to hear those ideas, the ideas from the parents, the ideas the school committee has, but the principals and I met today, and we have some strong ideas about what we would recommend. Apart from that, when we met today, there is the issue of learning time that's foremost in everyone's minds, particularly those people who are preparing kids for MCAS or for AP exams or whatever. And so we did make a couple of decisions today that have to do with learning time and not with makeup days per se. So we will eliminate the next 2 elementary release days. So there's one next Wednesday. When I say eliminate it, that will be a full day of school instead of a part day of school. And the following one, which is May 8th. So those 2 days, and we'll notify parents. I said I wanted to bring that information to you tonight so you'd be the first to hear it. We'll notify parents of that full days of school on the March 4th and April 8th. At the high school, we will have a full day of school next Wednesday as well. So that's the elimination of a release time day. And at the middle school, I didn't bring that with me in my haste to leave the other room, but we are eliminating a release day at the middle school as well, and that's just to add learning time. That doesn't help with our issue of making up days, but it does give us a little more learning time. It kind of would be silly in anyone's estimation that we would have a release day next Wednesday after what we've been through this week, so that just didn't make any sense at all. And that will help.
Anything from the governor? Were they?
Well, so far, what we've heard from the governor is the same wording that we have heard from Mitchell Chester.
Actually, in the Globe today, there was an article that the governor is in Washington for the National Governors Association, and he's also, it said he was trying to meet with FEMA to potentially get 75%, so that towns could get 75% of their costs reimbursed. So I felt, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Baker, let's get all we can, because that would certainly help all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's down there for a couple more days and working on that. That's
I mean, that would be kind of the best of all worlds, that we get one or those first two blizzard days. That should be something that impacted everyone across the state. Other districts and other parts of the state have not been as impacted by the subsequent storms and the number of them. So that's always something we can hope for. But I would be thrilled if we set up a plan and then we got those days. That would be a wonderful thing. But I'm not optimistic.
On the second.
Yes. Yeah. I think on the second, I don't know how we're going to do this. I'll talk to Alex and Tom on Wednesday and kind of strategize, but we can't afford to wait, to make decisions that get fewer and fewer as we move forward.
In your perfect world, just talking for yourself, you'd like to get it from like June 24th, like June 22nd.
Right.
And
And even better, the best day would really be able to go back to the 15th and to the prior Friday. And the reason for that is there are a lot of summer camps, sleepaway camps that start on the 22nd. And
Can you get information about whether a half-day Saturday would count as a day?
well, this is how we handled the situation before, and I think it's totally within the not only the spirit but the letter of the law. He has said that we have to make up full days. One of the reasons that we had in our mind this morning when we talked about adding some learning time is that what we did at the middle school when we had to make up 2 days and we went on a Saturday, we eliminated 2 upcoming release days and made those full days. And then when we had the 2 Saturdays, we made them release days. And in my mind, that gave us, and it's not just in my mind, the reality is that we had as many full days and release days as we had in our original schedule. So part of our thinking about announcing those eliminations of release time now is that could give us another option if we went in that direction, whereas if we wait too long, then that option is gone as well.
So just a question, you have the answer fine, otherwise. So the seniors in high school obviously graduate and finish school earlier.
They're exempted. As long as you're in your original schedule, you are within that magic number of days of the our scheduled release, you're okay. So seniors are kind of feeling good.
They are. Believe me, I hear about it every day.
So.
Go in June. Keep going till the end of June.
So should we start emailing the governor's office? I mean, I think we should start like an email campaign or something.
Well, I think that I've heard of some groups that want to do that, particularly groups of parents and so on, and he's been pretty rigid. There's also a lot of chatter, and we'll need to get into that probably within the next month, about the future. What should we do for the future? should everybody start school before Labor Day? You know, what our schedule has worked well. We've been getting out as early, if not earlier, than people who start before September. And the reason for that is that we have never given 2 weeks vacation at Christmas. I have never given 2 weeks vacation at Christmas. We do not have full day release days for professional development that many communities have, which are work days for teachers, but are not in the 180 for kids. So we haven't done those kinds of things. And so as a result, we have been getting out at a reasonable time. But there's a lot of chatter because of this event about starting school earlier, about eliminating February and April vacation and doing a March. But everybody would have to do that, you know, from a practical perspective. That's not one of my choices, but, you know, I don't have a lot of Aprils and Februarys left. So I don't feel strongly that I would say don't do it. It just isn't something I think gives you a lot of extra days. April and February are both 4-day vacation periods. That's a total of 8 days. If you give those both up and do a week in March as a vacation, that's 5 days. So that's a net gain of only 3 days. And given the kind of community that we are, eliminating February vacation here with the numbers of skiers that we have, to me would mean the skiers would still go skiing. But those of us who work here, Alec, we would still be working. So anyway, but there's going to be a lot of chatter about that statewide. The School Committee Association has done a survey. I think I got the results of that the other day. The superintendents have done a survey. And so we'll hear a lot more about should we be scheduling differently, or should we say, you know, this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and, you know, is this ever going to happen again? Or should we do something in between and say, for example, next year, Labor Day comes very late. This year, we were lucky. Labor Day last year and this year were early. Maybe there's a way to say we will start. Hingham parents, I can tell you from past surveys, want to start after Labor Day. That has been the pattern. But can we compromise and say, well, gosh, if Labor Day is on the 6th or 7th, maybe there's a situation where we should not do the same thing every year, but yeah, it is the 7th this year. So you're going to hear a lot of conversations about school calendars and school years, and people have strong views, as you might expect they would. But that's not today's problem. We got to solve this year's problem before next year's problem.
Okay. Let's try to get back to our.
Yeah.
So we skipped over a few things, Doc.
Okay.
We really skipped over communications. We had Brad. I told him we postponed Ted till next week. But if you had other communications?
Well, the two that I was going to mention were the information about Alec having sent a letter, and so we've talked about that. And I wanted to bring to your attention the discussion we had about changing release days to full days. And then in terms of the kindergarten update, just that we're moving along. We now have, thanks to some good feedback that came from Ray and Carol and Liza, we have an official tuition scale for the kindergarten. Hope that tomorrow I will be able to send that into DESE along with a form that explains how we would have our fees collected and the options that people would have for paying once or paying monthly and that kind of thing, to go in to be certified by DESE. I hope to send that in tomorrow. I talked with them last week, Thursday or Friday, just to be sure that we could get a quick turnaround. And this time of year they said they can give us a quick approval because we want to get the regular enrollment packet out. And we need to put the press release as to when the enrollment period will be in the paper. But we can't put it in the paper until we know our fee schedule has been approved. And they had originally said 2 weeks. I think she gave me the hope when I spoke with her last week that we would get that approval in less than the 2 weeks. And so the rest of the packet, the things that we typically need to collect from kindergarten parents, that's ongoing as well. and we need to set up a meeting for the meeting that we missed. One of the many meetings that we missed, but things are moving along, and we'll be announcing that packet
Yeah, I know
pretty
folks-
quickly.
Folks have been asking, when's registration going to be?
Yeah.
I'm grateful for Carol and Liza. I know you were away for taking time to look at that and get that fee schedule finalized. That was good that we could get that done.
Yeah.
So.
And I also spoke with Eileen in the town clerk's office, because they do a census each year. And when we spoke with her, I spoke with her, I think, on Friday, and she mentioned that she had almost finished collecting the data and analyzing it. So we will have that in time for the packet. Not that that tells us everyone who will show up, but it gives us a sense, and we send those lists of names out to the schools. So I think we're moving forward in good shape, doing all the really practical things that we need to do at this point.
Great. Okay, so our official public hearing on the operating budget.
Okay, so I don't see a lot of public here. However, there are public at home, so we need to keep that in mind. So I have just a few changes, and I know that we're not going to be acting on this tonight, but I want to go over with you where we are and the few changes that we have seen. So we're going to talk a bit about the revised operating and capital budget proposals, and these are going to then become subject to action next week with the school committee, or any amended version of the budget that the school committee may choose to consider. So going back to where we started, and back in a budget we developed in December of 14, and it became our initial request school department budget, not yet school committee budget. So the combined budget, that means the regular ed, the special ed, and the vocational program, was a proposed budget of $46,572,683, and at that time that list of items was up 7.09% from the current year, FY15. The regular education piece of it, which of course is the largest piece of the budget, was $35,546,173, and it was up 6.49% from FY15, the current year. Special education, also a big number, $10,955,327, and it was up 9.39% from FY15. I'll come back to that in just a minute. And vocational actually was down from the current year, anticipating fewer vocational students. So while that percentage increase or decrease is always a big percentage, it's really a matter of, in many cases, one child or two children. With respect to the special education, that is up a lot. And it's really for two reasons. The costs have gone up, particularly with respect to tuitions, even though the number of tuitions, students, has not grown. It's the cost of the individual tuitions that motivates that. The second big factor is that about $200,000 less is offsetting this budget in circuit breaker reimbursement. So that combined, excuse me, that combined amount makes that budget a higher percent increase. So that's where we started back in December. And the way we build the budget is that we look at the current year's budget, and we look at all the things that we know. We look at contractual obligations, we look at what we anticipate tuitions to be, we look at things that are absolutely known. Then we look at things that we can project based upon information we have. We can project what utility costs will be, for example. We make a projection of what our our new bus lease might be. And that's an estimate, but we base it not just on a guess, but on information that we have. Thank you. And we certainly have to make projections with respect to enrollment, student enrollment. And those of you who've been around know that we have a lot of charts that show where we think things are going and where we're not so sure. But that's how we build the budget, piece by piece by piece by piece. This budget then also includes some items that are new in the sense that they haven't appeared in the budget before, but also some items that have increased or decreased. And so we compiled a list of those kinds of items. And you've seen this list before. There are 2 pages that you have in your packet if you're in the audience, and school committee has. And so what we did is to go through the budget after we compiled what we thought the numbers would be with the information we have. And we said, you know what, there are some things that are brand new and they're high priority for us. We have a needs-based budget. So in the high column there, those are the things that we think we need. Think is probably not a strong enough word. We believe we need these things, and these are the costs. And most of them are things that are new. On the other hand, in the base budget, as we are putting it together, there are some things that just cost more and that we think we also need. And a service that needs to be increased, that kind of thing. And so you have a base that has some new things in it, but mostly those things that we need to call attention to. You know, this went up more than you might have thought it would go up. In the high category, those were needs that we identified and the costs that go with them, and then the grand total of the things. And they're here by function. There are about 30 or so functions of the budget, and these are the numbers that have the functions. And so you can look through all of those, but most people will always want to pay particular attention to that middle column, the high column. You should have this chart. You picked one up at the. So some of the things that were needs were increased middle school staffing, an increase in high school staffing. We believe those to be related to enrollment increases. Also in there were things like the increase that we knew would be happening with respect to our bus lease, which is up at the end of this year. And at the time that we did this original budget, we were anticipating having a new lease and requesting new buses. And also we were anticipating that we would ask for an additional bus and, of course, additional driver. And we have since made some changes in terms of how we will handle that transportation. There are some increases in other kinds of support functions. For example, the lab tech hours for the language lab. We've always had a language lab at the middle school, at the high school. We now have a language lab at the middle school. So we believe that we can't at this point afford to have 2 language lab people, 1 in each building, but if we add some additional hours to the person we have, then we can do some sharing of that person and be in a position where we have at least some supervision and some ability to train the middle school teachers. So there are items like that. And then there are practical things like snow tires that are on the list. We need some additional clerical support. I guess one of the big things in this budget is that over the years, we've probably always, when we had to sacrificed in terms of things that need to be in the classroom, in particular teachers. And so things that we have that are maintenance needs, or maintenance-related needs, have kind of fallen by the wayside. And so, as well, clerical needs. Our jobs have all gotten harder. There are more and more mandates all the time. The enrollment has grown, et cetera, et cetera. So that there is a need for support staff throughout this budget. And it could be clerical, it could be maintenance, or it could be in the area of health. We have enjoyed having a full-time nurse at each elementary school. I can't believe I even say that. Many years ago, we shared nurses. And we made that do. It worked okay. But the health needs that we have now, and the number of kids with allergies, and the number of kids with chronic conditions, and the number of kids with social and emotional needs and so on, really requires a nurse in every building, and at this point, the belief that we really need 2 full-time nurses at the middle school and the high school. Well, we don't have that, but we do have the luxury of having a full-time nurse and a paraprofessional, and at both the middle school and the high school this year, the paraprofessional we have actually is a registered nurse. So we are in a very fortunate position to meet the need that we have in a way that doesn't cost us as much money. I think over time we may need to do something else, because I don't know how long we'll have the luxury of that situation, but that's a different kind of need. So it needs to support kids, needs to support our clerical staff and us actually, and needs to take good care of our buildings, are things that are in the budget. So there's a whole range of things that are either in the base budget as things that we needed to add to, or costs that we thought were unusual and needed some explanation, or things that we thought were new. And so there's a grand total of those. So those were things that were added to the original budget that we built based upon projections, information we had about enrollment, or actual information we had, such as what teacher salaries would be and what tuitions would be. We made some adjustments to the budget on January 29th, and here's a list of what those are. Some of the adjustments we were able to make because there were real changes, information about real changes in the original budget that we had, mainly around personnel. The real changes that occur between the time we build the budget and the time that the school committee finally adopts a budget are typically in 2 areas: information about personnel, an additional retirement, a leave of absence that someone's going to take for next year, a return from a leave of absence that someone is going to do or not do from last year, or a special ed tuition. And we've had changes of both cases. So some of the adjustments that we made, and most of the adjustments are down, are the result of new information. Some others are the result of looking at things in a different way in order to be able to reduce the impact in the budget. And one of those is to, for example, defer the additional driver and bus. Chose not to do that, and to try to negotiate a new contract for an extended period with our 8-year-old buses, and there was agreement with the school committee to do that. So that was a real attempt to reduce the budget and spread the impact of a very big increase over more than 1 year. So that kind of thing is in there as well. And other than that, I don't think there were any other kinds of things that we did at the time of the 29th. There was a few small changes that were suggested, but there was not a significant new. Oh, the one thing that was a significant cut was removing 1 full-time equivalent from the high school request. We requested 3.625 full-time equivalents, and we removed 1 of those. And again, that was in an effort to reduce the scope of the budget, and also because certainly the perception was that while the high school increased a lot last year, it really isn't increasing much this year in terms of population. And of course, I can always make the argument that it increased a lot last year, and we did get some additional staffing, but we didn't get all that we asked for, and we didn't get all that we asked for the year before either. So you could make a case, but that was an area where we knew we had to reduce the budget at some point, and so we went in that direction, because certainly some of the kids receive a level enrollment at the high school would be not a cause for additional staffing. We also had a special ed tuition that we found out about, that a student, we are not going to be able need to support that student's tuition for the coming year, so that's a real change that we are able to take out. and as well an anticipated retirement from someone who does not want her name to be made public at this time, but is going to retire. When I mentioned that we tried to pay more attention to support kinds of services, including maintenance, one of the positions that we had added for the coming year is a facilities manager and procurement person, a position that we thought would be in the $90,000 range, and we did have a discussion with members of some of the leaders of AdCom and also Board of Selectmen chair to see whether or not that would be a position that, at least in the first year, we could share in a way that would be a position that would be in our budget and would be a staff member for the public schools, but where the town would pay us an offset, particularly around the idea of doing a facilities asset in the first year of this person's job, and make that both the town and school asset assessment. What are the things that we have? What are the buildings and the structures that we have? What are the ages of the utilities and all of the other kinds of mechanicals and so on that are in those buildings? What are the ages of the roofs and all that? Something that I think we've all talked about as being very useful, particularly to Capital Outlay Committee over the year. So there was an offset talked about for that. Since that offset now has gone from $30,000 to $25,000, we'll see that in a minute. So we made these adjustments on the 29th at a budget hearing. After that, we've had 2 other meetings, and we now have some additional offsets. And these are, again, a combination of things where we have new information and places where we've gone to get some school committee priorities setting around what the highest priorities are. It's a needs-based budget. We're not going to get everything that we need, so what are the highest priorities? And the school committee had 2 meetings that were very good discussions about what are the things that we think are the greatest needs and how can we fund those. And we also then kind of scoured the budget yet again to see if there were other ways either to produce new savings or to use funds that were in revolving accounts. So as a result of the discussion that this group had Thursday before, the last time that we were in school on a Thursday, as a result of that, I put together some of the things that I think, with the 12th, yes, we had good consensus on. And so these are adjustments that were made after the meeting of the 29th and mostly around the meeting that we had on the 12th. So if you then look on this page down to where it says adjustments, we had adjustments, one adjustment that was made on January 29th, that was a savings of $62,000. We had the adjustments that we made after the meeting of the 29th, or at the meeting of the 29th, that was a $319,381 adjustment. And then we had the adjustments that we made subsequent to the 12th, or we discussed them on the 12th, but this is the first time the school committee is actually seeing them all. And that's another reduction of $209,352. So the combination of all of those is an adjustment to date, a reduction in the original budget amount by $591,044. And so if you look at the very bottom of the page and think again of the overall budget, we have the base budget that we started with, which is the budget for the year we're in. That's the $43,490,722. We have our original request for FY16, $46,572,683. We have the original change between what we're asking for 16 and what we have for 15, and that was $3,081,961. A lot of dollars, we agree. We have then the total adjustments, and so now we have a difference between current year and what is at this point proposed for the next year, and that's an overall budget of 5.73%, and is a budget of $45,981,639. So, another way of looking at that information is to use the typical form that we use for the budgets, where you have all the line items down on the left-hand side. You have the 13-14 budget, the 14-15 budget, that's the year we're in, what we originally proposed, and then the adjustments that we made on the 29th and then after the meeting of the 12th. And if you look at the bottom row across there, you can see the same thing that you saw on the prior page, that at least for the regular education piece of the budget. And so that is at 5.04% at this point. So with all the reductions that we made in the regular education budget, it's at right now 5.04% for regular education. If you look at special education, there were fewer reductions there, but that budget has come down some, and those are real changes. Those don't represent any cuts in service or any failure to pay for what children need. That budget is now at 8.31%. And if you look at the very bottom, that number hasn't changed. We anticipate the tuition still to be $71,182. Acceptances don't come out typically until about the first part of May with respect to vocational ed, so we just never know then whether a child who's applied will be accepted or whether some child we didn't even know about decides to apply. We ask for people to let us know by December 1st if they're applying, but that's not a requirement, and so we can't make it a requirement. The fact is, anyone who applies to a voc school and gets accepted would be someone that we have to fund. So if you look then at the total budget, it's at 5.73%, and all of those numbers and that bottom line across the line are what the budget was at various points in the process. So that's kind of hard to look at, I think, and make sense of. But the three big numbers are the 5.04% for regular ed, the 8.31% for special ed, and the minus 25.03% for voc, or the overall increase at this point of 5.73%. One of the other things that we did that doesn't show up in the bottom line, but that we did just because of the reality that at some point, not at some point now, next Monday night, you're going to have to make a decision about what budget you want to go forward with, is that we took all of the special education costs and we put them into the appropriate lines in the budget. And actually they all fell in two places. Some of them fell in the regular education 2300 account, the personnel account. So there were teachers in that account and there were paraeducators in that account. And there were specialist teachers in that account, pieces of specialist teachers. A half phys ed teacher, a half classroom music teacher, and a Spanish teacher as well. So those went in the 2300 regular. And then there were some costs that went into the 2300B special ed account, and they were two special education teachers, two teachers that will have dual licensure so that we can have a model that's very much like our current integrated kindergarten in each of the four schools. So those four people then ended up in, or budget for them, ended up in the 2300B account. However, we anticipate funding all of this, at least in the first year, fully by tuitions. So in each two of those two accounts, you see the FTEs added, but you would see, when you see the final budget book, you will see a reduction of those fees, which reflects the offset that will come from the specialized revolving account that we need to set up, that don't change the bottom line, but integrate this kindergarten program into our budget as we had intended to do. And so there are two of those offsets, 2300 and 2300B, and they will be there. So that's kind of a zero change in the bottom line, but it is a real incorporation of those people into the budget. And of course, those costs are the ones we've been working with all along, and they assume 300 kids, 15 sections, and so on. So all of that has a lot of unknown to it, but I think we have a good degree of comfort that we can raise the appropriate funding through the tuitions as we know what our survey has told us about the population. And so that's a change that was made subsequent to the February 12th meeting. And it was something that we had said we will ultimately do, and this was the time to do it before you take a vote on the actual budget, because the vote should reflect what it includes as well as what the offset would be to support it. So, in the end, the easiest way to look at the budget is, as of February 23rd, again, it's still school department budget being proposed for the full school committee's action, is a budget that is 5.73% across the board increase, 5.04% increase in regular ed, 8.31% increase in special ed, minus 25.3 increase or 25.3 decrease in vocational, and that reflects $591,044 from the initial request. So as you look towards next week, it strikes me that that a couple of things need to happen. One of the things that needs to happen is that you need to really look at the changes that we've made and be sure that they reflect consensus. And consensus doesn't mean that we reflected every individual person's total number of ideas. We tried to preserve in the budget those things that people felt were their highest priority. There are still some other things in the budget where there was a differing view of whether the item should remain in or remain out. Maybe those differing views will continue and we simply go forward with this number for you to act on, or perhaps you will decide as a group that something needs to, more needs to come out by the second. I always express my feeling about that, and that is that there's still a lot of time to go, and there is time for people to make changes about their status in terms of leave, retirement, that kind of thing. I can tell you, for example, that one unknown that we're waiting to hear about, we should know about by next week, and that is that we have 5 people who are currently on leave who haven't yet told us, but need to do so by March 1st, whether they're returning or not. All of them are budgeted as we guessed what might happen. So the best case scenario would be the case where our guesses are wrong, and we guess that they weren't going to come, that they were going to come back and they don't, and so the current replacement or another person like that would stay in place. And so the most we could do if everything went our way is an increase of another $70,000 or so. That's kind of the max good news. On the other hand, the maximum bad news, you know, if we budgeted that they weren't going to come back and then they do come back, typically that costs us money. And so that would be the worst case scenario would be a loss of $50,000. So some combination is more likely, but that's a real unknown. But we'll know about that in another week. So that's why I hesitate to say, oh, just cut, you know, X% more or whatever without knowing more about that. So that's one unknown. The other unknown is, of course, the forecast. There was originally going to be a forecast meeting today. We had some more discussion about that. I think fortunately for everyone, those votes from all 3 of the bodies that will need to vote are going to take place next week. I think that's good for a whole bunch of reasons, our snow reasons and the Aquarian trial and all those other things that are problematic. So we
as late as the 9th because of availability of some of its members. So we're waiting to hear more about that.
All right. So anyway, I'm always thinking that if there are things you absolutely don't think should be in here, you should take them out. You should take them out now. On the other hand, if these are things you all think are still important, there is some advantage to wait. The longer we wait, the more news we get. And most of the time, unlike the weather gods, most of the time the budget gods have rewarded us by the budget going down over time rather than going up over time. Then, if we look at the capital budget, we originally had a request of $1.297, $1.3 million. That was recommended to the Capital Outlay Committee, and School Committee had some input into refining that number, kind of prioritizing it, giving some information back to Capital Outlay. And the total amount that has been recommended by Capital Outlay directly to the Board of Selectmen and AdCom is $818,480, but also another $170,000, which had been carried as a school committee item, but really is a district-wide item, and that is the parking lot reconstruction and paving of the parking lot over at the depot. That really is a town-wide responsibility. So right now, that is funded in the capital outlay projection, and it's funded at $170,000. So out of our original 1.297, that number included the 170. So if you look then at what budget has been recommended, and you add the 818 and the 170 out of our request of 1.3, this is a very good news budget for us. You know, it's allowed us to do some catch up and do some really important things, and so really grateful about that. We don't always vote this because the thinking has been, well, you don't have a vote anyway. But I do think it is a good idea to affirm that your agreement, and I hope you would agree with me, that this is a good amount and take a vote. And that could happen at any point. Whereas the vote on the operating budget is one that we anticipate will happen on Monday night, at this point anyway. So, that is it.
If we wanted to, we did post it that way, or we could put it off till next week.
And you have in your packet what's included in it and what's not included in it.
And I don't think I think we might as well go forward with that unless anyone has any reservations. I mean, I think it's a very generous. Yeah.
Foster shed. That was one thing that we really wanted, though, right? Because when I was looking at my notes, that was the only thing when I was looking at what they deferred,
yeah,
that was the only one that jumped out at me. Or did we? Because I know and we've talked about this thing so many times.
Right.
I thought Foster shed, and I noticed they cut the weight room
Yeah.
from 50 to 25, but
although there's been some, they haven't finalized the number necessarily and voted because there was some correspondence the last few
That's
days.
right, yes,
In fact, over the weekend, Libby Claypool was asking about
the actual feasibilities.
School, erosion.
right, the e-school erosion and
That's
trying to
different
confirm
vote.
some numbers, and
Right.
so I guess there's a possibility it could change. So maybe we should wait.
I was just curious why they didn't give us the money on the Foster. Everything else I didn't. Yeah.
It's probably no different than it was last year. My understanding is they felt it was, it was not a safety concern necessarily, so they didn't see it as a higher priority. But I agree. I mean, I think if we have the ability to try to fund it, otherwise we should do that. We've already begun the process working on that. It's been 2 years now.
No, I was very happy with the allocation. I was that one just caught me that why they didn't.
The alarm system money that was here, that's been deferred, is that correct?
That alarm system money is in the selectmen's budget.
Okay.
So the selectmen are picking up the capital. However, we do have recurring charges built within our budget.
So that is something that we can reduce or not?
It's already been reflected in, I think.
It's reduced in the capital budget, but we have to maintain it as a recurring charge within our budget.
Okay, so it is going to go forward. At some point, there was discussion about whether it would go forward or not, so.
It is.
Yes.
The selectmen decided to
They're
take care of
gonna
that,
do
their
it.
budget,
Okay.
the capital piece of
Right,
it.
and so we have to keep the operating.
Yeah, I have not heard, I know what you're talking about. I haven't heard that they're going to delay that process again.
My understanding is going to go
It's
forward.
gonna go forward, yes.
Funding recurring.
Exactly, which is
Operating.
17.6.
On the leave of absence thing you just spoke about, currently it's budgeted for all those people to return, or not?
There were originally 9 people who had a full year's leave this year.
Right.
And they have to, we send them a letter on February 2nd, February 1st, that says by March 1st, you have to tell us whether or not you're going to return. But meanwhile, when we do the budget in the early part of December, we put in a best guess. And principals usually kind of have a sense of if somebody's planning to come back or not. So we've heard of the original 9, we've heard from 3 of them, 4 of them. And we heard from another one the other day, but we knew she was coming back, we budgeted her to come back, she is coming back, so it doesn't show up here. So that leaves 5 more people. Typically the people who delay it are the people that are somehow on the fence. Or they're people who aren't going to come back but just don't want to tell us. They're feeling badly about that. So, so there's more likely to be swings with the people who delay. The people who let us know early, we probably knew that anyway, and we budgeted that they would come back.
So in the budget now, we did not budget for all those people to come back. You made your best guess.
We made our best guess.
So
That's
so
correct.
If all of them did come back, it would be a negative impact on the budget, which you indicated.
No, because some of them we budgeted that we knew they would come back,
I
and
said, so if all of the people remaining came back, the 5 people came back, that would have a negative impact on the budget or no
it's a
impact?
combination. I think the best way to try to understand it is to say what's the best case scenario that could happen out of these 5. And the best case scenario that could happen is that we budgeted that they would come back, and they didn't.
Okay.
And the best case scenario in terms of dollars in that is, I think, $71,000 or so. On the other hand, the worst case scenario is when we budgeted that they weren't going to come back, and they do. And that cost us more money. So the worst case scenario, 2 of those people.
We're down to 5 people.
We're down
So
to
that's what I'm
5
saying. If
people,
those
so-
5 people all came back, there would be a negative impact on the budget.
So again, it's by individual basis.
Yeah,
So
I'd
she didn't
have to
budget
look at
all
the
of them
numbers.
to come back or not to come back. It's based on their individual circumstances. So she may have budgeted for some of them to come back, knowing their specific circumstances, or others not. So, given those specific individual circumstances, the best case is that we budgeted more than we needed to, and we'll have extra dollars, and the folks won't come back that we thought
That's
would.
$70-something thousand.
Worst case is we didn't think they were going to come back and didn't budget enough, and some decide to come back, and then it
But-
costs us money that we didn't budget.
But we know about all of these people but 5, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about those 5.
We're just talking about the 5 that are remaining.
So she just gave you the numbers. So the best case scenario is we can come up with another $71,000 savings in the budget. The worst case scenario, it's going to cost us another 50,000.
And
That
more
would
likely
not
it's
budget.
somewhere in between.
That's what you're trying to get. Dennis, you're smarter than I am, and I get this.
Well, I asked the question 3 times, and I thought I would get that answer. So the other question I have is, I think some of you attended the subcommittee meeting before our meeting. Do we have any further indication as to which way the wind is blowing there?
Somewhat. I mean, I certainly am appreciative of their approach. They're not just looking to slash. They're being very thoughtful about their approach and really embracing our needs based approach. I think if it were up to them, which I think is refreshing because in past years it hasn't necessarily been like this. If it were up to them, if all the money were available, we would have all the money that we need. It's just a matter of where the numbers are going to fall and how much is going to be available based on what we're looking for and other departments are looking for. So, I mean, I think we're close. According to their numbers, we might be within a couple $100,000 of where our number is sitting and what they're thinking of. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked that carefully at their numbers at this point, and they're still fluid because they're still deliberating, and they're going to continue to deliberate before they vote. So.
And we have that other big unknown, the governor's budget too, that really, when it's the first budget for any particular governor, you don't know, it doesn't have good sense.
But also recognizing that until all of these unknowns in the forecast, even though they may be supportive of some of the things, there's still may not be enough money to balance it all.
So do we know on healthcare yet? Have those numbers come in?
I don't think there's a definitive answer on that, but really there hasn't been a whole lot of change in the last few weeks with respect to anticipated revenues. So whatever we last talked about is about where we still are, and I think there's still a significant gap based on what the ask is and what they think is going to be available.
We do anticipate a postponed forecast meeting.
Yeah,
That was going
later
to
this
happen
week,
today,
Thursday or
will
Friday.
happen before this vote. So that will give us more.
Yeah, and I've asked Ted to come back next Monday on the 2nd to review the forecast with us, and he will do that.
So presuming we will vote something on the 2nd, the advisory will meet on the 5th or the 9th or whatever that day is. So if there's a difference between what they vote and what we vote,
we'll have to decide how we want to approach that. In the past,
we won't be meeting until the 16th, perhaps.
Well, right. One, we'll talk about that. Two, we can always meet if we need to meet, if people are available to meet.
Okay.
But last year, what we did was we didn't do anything right away, and we, had the hope we might have some more changes, and ultimately we did. You did take a vote, but there wasn't an urgency about it as long as it happened before the town meeting. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, really, we have until the 27th. We don't really. I mean, advisory's going to make their recommendation and their vote, and then once that's done, we really don't have to do anything until town meeting or before town meeting. Either we change our vote if we think that's appropriate, or we don't. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Comments? No? Thank you for that work. I know it's been a busy number of days, and neglected to mention earlier when we were talking about all the snow and the efforts. John, I saw you a lot over the weekend. You worked tremendous amount of hours. I'm really appreciative of all your efforts to get us through, this event, and Dot as well. It's funny, you try to get Dot on the phone, and is she already on the other line or at the computer or talking to somebody else? Or so thank you both for all your efforts as well. And Ellen, good to have you back healthy. Okay. Where's my agenda? So we're not going to take action on the operating budget or the capital budget for now. We've heard our industrial technology review, which is great. We have a bid to award on the vans, the sped vans. Great, this is good news. Thank you.
Yeah, so we recently advertised for sealed bids for the purchase of two special education vans, one wheelchair van and another 10-passenger van. We received two bids for those vans. The wheelchair van, we received bids from New England Wheels and from Quality Van Sales. And you can see on your attachment the prices. New England Wheels came in at $45,454, and Quality Van Sales came in at $44,478. However, New England Wheels bid what was specified. Quality Van Sales came up with a lower engine, Ford Transit 150 as opposed to a 250 or a 350, which was specified. And while the bid did call for an or as equal, the 150 is not comparable to a 250 at all. So they really aren't eligible for the award of the wheelchair van. So I'm making a recommendation for an award of the wheelchair van here to New England Wheels in the amount of $45,454. I believe we have $47,000 reserved for the wheelchair van in the capital budget for this year. Now the 10-passenger van, that one there is the presumed lowest bidder on that one was New Quality Van Sales. However, in looking at the bid specs, Quality Van Sales, the bid called for integrated child safety seats, and they didn't bid integrated child safety seats. When I called them to question about what their bid was, they said, well, this new Ford Transit, there is no integrated child safety seat that has passed national standards yet for the new Ford Transit frame. The reason last year we paid like $30,000 or $27,000 or $28,000 for a regular 10-passenger van. Ford discontinued their basic frame model, and once you come in with a new frame model, every single component of these vans have to be sort of recertified. So the New England Wheels did bid the integrated seats at a price of $37,865. However, my effort to contact them to check to see if the assertions of the other bidder were correct or not, he was not available, and he won't be available until Wednesday. So at this point, I'm unable to say which one of those bidders should get this. If they didn't pass the national safety standards, if it still is sort of a seat that you really can't get from a regulatory standpoint right now, then the winning bidder would be Quality Van Sales, and I would propose that the committee would authorize me to award the bid to them should I find that out in the investigation. Otherwise, if the integrated child safety seat is available, it's a very good feature to have in these vans because it really simplifies the connection of child carrier seats, and I think it would be worth the extra $1,000 or $1,800 that we paid. Would pay for that van. That I would request that the committee allow me to award the bid to New England Wheels at a price of $37,865. Both of those are over what the capital amount is. We had authorized $30,000 in the capital. So we'd probably look to cut another component of capital somewhat to make up that difference of the $5,000 or $6,000.
And the difference really is more if we have to go with the van that doesn't have the seat and have to purchase safety seats, or do we have?
No, it would just be a different way of strapping the safety seat in. These integrated child seats, they sort of snap in these safety seats automatically. Otherwise,
Right,
you have to build them in.
What does the $36,000 cost include?
That includes the regular seats,
Okay.
not the integrated child safety seats, the ones that have passed standards according to this bidder. And I've talked to the bidder. I've also called the company that they contracted the seats with, Friedman Easy Seats, and but those companies will tell you whatever they want to tell you. So I want to make sure that I talk to the other bidder as well to find out had their seats in fact been met safety standards before I award the bid.
Information we'll have before our meeting next Monday.
Yes, yeah,
So
we could do that. We could hold off on the second one until then. Sure, yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we purchase a 2015 Ford Model T250 wheelchair van in the amount of $45,454 from New England Wheels.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. This is good because I know there are folks that have been waiting.
Yeah, there still will be once the award. I mean, it's about 10 weeks to get it. So
10 weeks.
yeah,
Okay.
they have to chop these up and build them custom. So
So you can check back on the information on the second.
Yes.
And then we can revisit this on Monday.
right, he should be back in Wednesday.
Probably somebody at Ford could tell you whether it's been approved or not. It's Ford van.
It's not so much the Ford van, Dennis. I think that it's after they take the basic Ford fans and then they put in all these seats and all these different components. So they sort of chop them up and put them back together. But each time they do something, they have to crash test it and meet the type of standards that are necessary for school transportation. So he bid it, but I want to make sure that it's been, because the specification required that it met all national and, you know, Massachusetts and whatever local authorities' safety standards. Thank you. Unfortunately, this happens so much. Nothing is ever so clean. You know, it just seems like things aren't always clean.
The next item is revolving account for Plymouth kindergarten tuition.
This is one of the requirements from the Department of Education that as we collect tuitions, they need to be in a separate revolving account. Right now, we have one tuition revolving account, and it includes the tuitions for the Kids in Action, to integrated preschool and former integrated kindergarten, and we can't mingle that money with the tuition money for the full-day program, so we need to have a separate account. It needs to be set up as those accounts are, and you would need to authorize it. So Aisha, who's here, tonight, put together this as the sample letter, and we would request your action to approve the establishment of that account. Monies actually will be coming in as soon as we start our kindergarten enrollment process, because at that point there is a deposit that would be needed, and we need a place to put it. So.
All right, I'll make a motion to authorize the Director of Business and Support Services to establish a revolving account to facilitate full-day kindergarten tuition payments as proposed in the draft letter dated February 23rd, 2015 to the town of Hingham, to Sue Nickerson in particular.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Any 48-hour items?
No, other than the Monday night meeting. So we would need to set up a meeting for Monday night, if in fact that is going to happen. We believe that it will.
Yes.
I'm only questioning because you said that the other bodies might vote later.
Yeah,
but we're going to go forward. Okay.
Next Monday, regardless.
And so I just wanted to mention that we would like to add to that agenda possible discussion, further discussion anyway, of the makeup days and how we will handle that. And also we would bring to you recommendations for fee increases for the integrated pre-K program and the Kids in Action program. And we'll have that information to you early this week so you can look at those figures. We're looking at a slightly larger possible increase for the Kids in Action program, because this will be her first year of a much reduced program, reduced in terms of scope, because a big chunk of that program, which is the wraparound program, will not be there. So we'd be looking for a slightly larger increase to give her a little bit more of a cushion as she's reorganizing her program, and then a more modest 2.5% increase for the integrated preschool program, which we still need to have. We don't need peer models, obviously, for the kindergarten. So that we would bring to you for action on Monday night. We're a bit behind, as we are in so many things, because of the many changes and meetings and postings and all of that. But we need to move forward.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Also, at the March 2nd meeting, could we have a discussion about what would be discussed at the planning board meeting on March 9th about the usage fees?
Sure.
What is our intent of the review?
Well,
And then are we making proposals for changes?
yeah,
or?
so it's a two-part process. We talked about it just for a minute now. So on the 9th is going to be, and I saw the posting in the paper, I think, or somewhere. So it is going to be on the 9th. It's not a formal public hearing, but it is part of the requirement of the conditions of site plan approval to have this year look back. And it's essentially an opportunity for folks to come back and say, okay, how do things go? Are there things that need to be, looked at? Are there any problems that we need to address? For our purposes, in terms of making changes to the use conditions, we would need to submit a formal application to modify the site plan conditions. And we wouldn't be able to do that until we have this look back meeting. So they turned it in, they made it a two-part process. We have this look back, which finally has been scheduled since all of the work has been completed, all the as-builts have been filed. We've gotten sign off by the Conservation Commission, partially anyway. And then we can apply so we'll have to submit an application to modify the condition pertaining to usage. I already spoken to Margaret, and we can certainly talk more about it. And like I think I mentioned last time, if you have suggestions or ideas about how you think we should be looking to alter the policy that we put into place that was essentially adopted as a condition to site plan approval, then certainly we can talk about that next week. Margaret has been talking to her coaches. She has a number of suggestions. I think there are a number of things that kind of came up immediately that we knew, well, gee, this isn't right. But we can certainly talk about that next week.
I don't have anything off the top of my
Yeah.
head. I would like to be informed before the March 9th meeting
Sure.
where everybody's thinking. That's
Sure. No, and I will talk to Margaret this week and see if I can get a list of those things that she's already discussed with her coaches and that she has in mind that need to be, and put something together and send it out and we can talk about it. Sure.
That would be great.
Would the planning board actually, they wouldn't be voting on it at that?
No.
I mean, that's just
Yeah,
sort
it'll
of the
be
initial.
right. So we'll have to submit that modification application and
Then
get a
yeah.
subsequent meeting, which will probably be a few weeks after that. So I'd hope to be able to kind of do it all together, but they can't do it that way.
Speaking of Margaret,
Yes.
48 Hour News, I think that she and Paula interviewed the finalist candidates that had been recommended by the screening committee that she put together, and they were unanimous in their choice. And Margaret was calling this evening to offer the position to a gentleman, which I can't name because we want to be sure he accepts the job. But the good thing was it was a popular choice of the screening committee, as well as a very impressive individual to Margaret and to Paul, this football coach that we're talking about.
So I can tell you that I wasn't involved in the process at all. I didn't know any of the applicants, didn't see any of the documentation until about a week ago when I saw Margaret at a basketball game, and they had gotten it down to 3 finalists, and then she and Paula were going to interview during the vacation break and then make a decision.
And that
she
got postponed to today.
Right, and she shared with me those 3 candidates, those 3 finalists, and we talked a little bit about it. And I got to tell you, I don't know who she chose, but any one of them is going to be fantastic. One happens to be a Hingham resident, the other 2 are not, but any one of them would be fantastic. And I think anyone who's interested in this, who's been either part of the process or not part of the process and has been following this and is interested in the next high school football coach, is going to be pleased with the choice.
So we'll probably have that by Monday night.
Paula will tweet who that
I
is
hope we get that
tomorrow.
information tomorrow.
Right, yeah.
Should we talk about dates?
Yeah. Right, so I had sent around the email kind of making a suggestion or a proposal based on the fact that the planning board scheduled that meeting for the 9th and thinking that would be more than a brief meeting, that perhaps, several of us may have wanted to attend that, and so thinking that might not be practical to have a school committee meeting that night, plus the fact that we're meeting tonight, we're meeting again next Monday, and there is that 3-week break in April rather than the every other week. If we were to adjust to the 9th, if we were to adjust to the 16th, 30th, and April 13th, that keeps us at every 2 weeks leading up to town meeting, rather than having a 3-week gap. That was my thought behind that.
My only concern about that, and we can solve it, I think, in a different way, is the issue of the snow day
Yep.
change. Because if we need to wait until the 16th, we've taken some options off the table, I think, is in terms of not being able to give people sufficient notice. But
That would probably only with the April vacation option, right? What you're thinking about?
well, it could take some Saturday options off the table too.
Right, but there would still be Saturdays remaining. And
Well, we've looked at, when we met today with the principals, we looked at all the possible options. We looked at things like if Saturday were an option, and that hasn't been decided, but we're trying to keep as many options open. We looked at that, and we looked at when there were like there's a large student drama trip, that occurs for a Saturday, and I've forgotten which date, but it's like the 21st or something, and then there's something else, a large, what? We also looked at the MCAS schedule as well. So it's just late to be making a decision about, particularly the Saturday thing.
Every parent that I've talked to is against Saturday school.
Excuse me?
Every parent I've talked to, yep, is pretty much. I mean, so much goes on Saturdays now for these kids too. I mean, they have
Well,
organized
I think
sports.
that the only reason that if we need to pick up more than one day we could pick up if there were consensus about Good Friday, and there seems to be a lot of parent support on that. But then we're into April vacation, and then we have, I think it's 3, did Paula say, student trips to Europe, for one thing. I have parents that have told me that they're going off to Europe, the college, and all of those are costly things. And I think what will happen then, if that is the decision, is that the student trips and the parent plans and so on will go forward. And we'll have less kids in school. But we will have a real challenge about what about teachers that also may have similar expensive plans already set. So there are more complications. This is the process we went through today with the principals. All of these options have negative consequences. So which are the ones that have the most negative consequences?
I will tell you, a couple of high school kids, several that I've talked to, said they'd rather go to school on a Saturday than take away April vacation.
Yeah, I think if you ask the question, should we go to school on Saturday, people will say, oh my God, no.
But when you say
I don't always see April vacation as an option. I think lots of people have plans.
right, I mean, Carol, I've heard the same thing, but the same people who say no Saturday say, well, no April vacation either. Oh, and I can't go to school on Good Friday. And so there's so many. Alec, can I ask you a question? I know we need to sit down at a table and do this formally, but can you give me a sense of what you're thinking about, what your preferences are, what you're interested in, what your folks are concerned about?
My personal preference, or well, I can
The teachers union.
say,
Teachers union.
teachers union. I think I can safely say that the first option would probably be the most popular, would be to extend June.
Okay.
Go as late into June as possible. And then, I think I could probably say on Good Friday, but I would agree that there are just too many things going on for April vacation. I think Carol made a good point with college visits. We've got school trips. We've got teachers too have also maybe blocked some time off during that time. So I think, given the fact that the automatic impulse whenever there's a snow day, people just automatically add a day in June, and today is and this year being no exception. What does that make the last day? Well, now it makes it the 18th. Now it makes it the 21st. Now it makes it the 22nd. And I think that's just the automatic response. So my sense is that is what people are, I would say teachers are probably expecting, we'll go until June 30th. And then when we reach June 30th, then if there are, my gosh, if we have yet more snow days, then we'll start considering taking unusual steps.
And a Saturday might be the least popular option?
Well, I can't speak to that, but I do know that people, because it's been done in the past with the middle school, again, people understood that was an exceptional case. Because it's been done in the past, it wouldn't be considered completely out of the blue, but that's just very preliminary.
Today, faced with situation where tomorrow 5 schools will be open and PRS will not, there'll be an uneven situation. We're going to have to find a day to make up for PRS. That might be PRS kids go on a Saturday, just like we did 4 years ago with the middle school. But that wouldn't affect the whole district, and maybe that would be a reasonable
I really
approach
think
to.
we should be looking at Good Friday as, as a day.
To start
I mean,
with.
What are we gonna learn? But
Yeah.
what are we gonna know 2 weeks from now that we don't know by next Monday?
Well,
Well, but there's the bargaining,
No, I'm
there's
just
the
saying,
bargaining
if
issue.
you presented what your thoughts were to us, we could have a discussion and say, our thinking, our understanding is, or, you know, like we were almost voted to say, John, you know, do what you have to do to get this van. We could say, based upon what we've heard tonight, I'm saying next Monday, we would think Good Friday, I'm just saying, as an example, Good Friday would be the first choice. We would go 2 Saturday mornings, and then if we had to, we would do X. And then you could certainly, you're certainly going to meet with the teachers union, and you're going to have some discussion, but you would have some guidance, so you wouldn't have to go there and then meet with them, and then come back to us, and then say, okay, now what would you guys think? I don't know how other people in the school committee feel, but we could tell you, you know, kind of a prioritized list of the things that we're thinking of, because I don't think we, as a group, will know anything more beyond that. I mean, you'll hear from people.
Right.
People want to go to April.
So, yeah, I mean, I
don't see April vacations at all.
Right, I don't see that as.
I think we can all agree on that.
I think we can.
So.
Can I tell you what more the principals?
Isn't that, I mean, right? I feel June 24th is still reasonable.
Well, except
Well,
the middle
let me-
school's going on a big trip.
I think June 24th is a reasonable day to get out. I would say that the principals would tell you that days in June are after MCAS, AP exams, and so on. So going late into June is not something that that the principals would have as their first choice.
Educationally, it's not.
Educational, right. The other thing about the 24th, and this is why I say I'd like to get it back before that, is there are a number of parents who have told me that they've signed up for sleepaway camps that start the 22nd, the week of the 22nd, and they'll go. So that's okay, because that only impacts the kids. They won't come to school, they won't benefit from the education, but that works okay. We have a very large student field trip, not a field trip, really a student trip, that occurs starting on the 23rd. That includes almost 100 students, so that would be a loss of a significant number of students. More importantly, it involves 10 staff members. And so we can't make a decision with the students, so the parents have paid for it, likely they would go anyway, but the trip couldn't go forward without the staff, and then how would we? So there are some things like that that we need to think about.
23rd.
That's the 23rd?
They're leaving on the morning of the 23rd.
So take away Good Friday. I mean,
Yeah.
and then get school
And
business.
have one. So that's what I mean. There are not any good things about any of them. There are some.
The only thing I don't like about it, like, if you have just one day, if Monday's the 22nd, the one thing nice about going to the 24th is at least you're going for a full week. I think when you're down to one day,
24th is
No,
a
I
Wednesday.
agree.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
then at least you have 3
Yeah.
days.
Right.
If it's just the 22nd,
Yeah, nobody will
blown
show.
off.
Yeah.
You know, so either
Well,
you go
unless
for the
you
full
have
week or you go back.
finals.
to
Well,
the
we're not at the 22nd now anyway.
So,
We're at the
why-
24th. So.
Why don't we, I mean,
I think we need to talk to.
it seems like most of us, if not all of us, feel that April vacation is probably not practical. So, given that, it would seem that maybe we would have until the 16th, and if we can get together with HEA in the interim and get to yes quickly on that, I mean, I think what you've offered so far seems reasonable if that's what folks are thinking. You know, I think we're just trying to keep the pain down for everybody.
So the only question on a Saturday though, John, for planning is that I know the middle school we just signed off. They're doing a day-long trip on a Saturday, and then the high school I know drama group is going to New York on a long week on a weekend in April. So maybe that's what you're referring
So
to.
we had identified if you were going to do a Saturday, there were only, I think there were a total of 4. I didn't bring it in with me. Saturdays in March and April that could work.
Is there any
So-
way? Is there any way to delay the trip a day or two?
Yeah, I would
No.
ask that.
Which trip?
The
The 8th grade trip?
The trip that leaves on June
By a
23rd.
day.
Well, this has been planned for over a year. It's a year in advance. It's a significant number of dollars.
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying.
It's all
if you
planned
went
out,
to
the 8th
Unless,
grade trip.
unless they're going to be at, unless they're going to be at an event or something that happens a certain day. I'm just asking if you
Oh,
went
we
to the
can, I
tour
can check
operator.
on that.
If you went to tour, I don't know if they
Yeah,
can.
no, I
They
can
go to
check
the tour
on that.
operator and say, could we leave on the 25th?
My sense is, you know, there are guides and all those things lined up, but we can check on that.
Each year it ranges between 30 to 45% of the class goes.
You
Yeah,
know, I'm
it's
not
a
saying
large-
cancel anything, I'm just saying you go to the tour operator and
That's,
ask.
I'll check on that.
That's the question.
Are any of the Saturdays that you identified before March 16th? Or do you know? I mean, when were we gonna talk? Yeah, March 16th. That would be our.
Let me, I can go and get.
Right. So just while we have a second, so if anyone at home is still watching, and I don't blame you if you're not, but so I've heard there's been a lot of traffic about this issue, a lot of questions, a lot of folks being interested. When are we going to know? What are you going to do? Should you do this? Should you do that? Oh, this town does that. Why not 15 minutes a day? All these other
Can't do
options.
that.
This is not an easy topic, right? So folks at home should understand that that's why we've begun the discussion. We're continuing it tonight, and hopefully we'll get to an agreement that makes sense for everybody. And when we say everybody, we're talking about keeping, 4,200 students in mind, 4,300 students in mind. We're, talking about, 300 teachers and 130 paraeducators and bus drivers and custodians and food service workers and everybody else. So.
Just real quickly, if we have another storm,
Yep.
Exactly.
break might be back on the table.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's still only February 23rd.
True. That's
That's
true.
why, planning for a Saturday or whatever, we're doing it whatever we can now.
Right.
Gives you some flexibility, so if it has to be June
Right.
24th or June 25th, you go that way too. Like I say, I don't have any kids in the school, so it's not an issue for me, but I know when we did have kids in the school, we always had April planned.
Dr. Gallo,
Sometime in advance.
I know you get the dates here in a second. Is there a way, if the middle school, since we already have to do a special day for PRS, in theory, does everyone have to get out on the 24th, or could the middle school in theory come up with a way?
I think that would be a huge challenge because there are 10 teachers going, and I'm assuming that
So
most.
they get out early so then they could go, and then the other schools go.
It's only the 8th grade, it's 100 kids
Oh,
out of
that's-
4,200,
Yeah, that's true.
percentage-wise.
Yeah, it's
We don't make decisions.
So the dates that are problematic are March 28th and April 11th. Those are the two high school student trips. April 3rd is the day before Easter, and so if we're going to eliminate Good Friday, you wouldn't want to
Yep.
then also in the same week send them off to school on the 3rd. And then when you get into April, there's the week before April vacation. So the best Saturday for all the people in that room, if you did a Saturday, would be March 21st. But if we don't meet until the 16th, making.
Not much notice 4 years ago. I think it was only a week or so when the first one was scheduled. No, but they spread it. It wasn't two consecutive Saturdays.
Okay, so-
It was-
So
We
you're.
could do the Plymouth River Saturday on those March 28th or April 11th if we did that for them.
Okay, so
That's a possibility.
3/21.
Is that the first day in the high school sports?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that did come up. As well.
You'd get back the day we lost today.
But we did talk about the fact that there are youth sports, and that was a big consideration when we did the middle school and did the Saturday thing. We had a consensus of the teachers at the middle school that that was the best day, because the goal there was everybody to get out at the same time. But youth sports, but
Youth
kind of
sports.
guessing.
Youth sports, the spring season, lacrosse is just getting underway, but otherwise.
But especially this
Well, this year
season
everything's
may not be.
Those snow.
There may likely be a lot of snow still on the ground, but yeah.
Okay, well,
We gotta talk about this Monday night.
I would say.
Yeah, but
we
at least
need
it's
to-
good. We've got things out on the table. People can give it some thought, and
I think we have to let people know.
Yeah, but for the dates of our meetings, in terms of making the changes from 3/9 and 3/23 And 4-6 to 3-16, 3:30, and 4:13. Does that work for people? I know Andy
Works for
had
me.
responded that he had a conflict on one or two of them, but he might have been away.
Well, so let's start with the second. We're meeting next Monday.
We are definitely
Yeah,
meeting
that's the
next
one you're
week.
away, Andy.
Yes, at 7:30, right?
Yeah, and that just came up. I mean, I'll tell you. Yes, it was yesterday morning.
Yeah, I read
Mary
the
Power
email,
called
yeah.
and said, "We're going to
Yeah.
push our votes.
Well, as I said
Maybe
in my
you should push your
email, it's
vote."
like, you know,
We couldn't
you know,
meet for
we don't have-
forecast today because the Aquarian trial was starting. Everyone had their minds on other things today, so
So that's 7:30 on the 2nd.
yeah.
Good.
And then instead of the 9th, the 16th.
Yeah, 7:30.
Yeah.
I think those are good dates, other than the concern about the.
And then instead of the 23rd, the 30th. And then just to keep it every 2 weeks instead of the 6th, it would be the 13th of April.
I'm actually, I may not be, I'm coming back in town the 13th, but I would have missed the 9th, so, so it's a swap for me.
It's a swap for you. All right.
I'm saying the April meeting moving from the 6th to the 13th. I may not be back in time for the 13th, but I would have been gone the March 9th, so I'm.
Do we think that'll work?
Losing interest
Yep,
already?
that's great. I just think to the extent we can make a decision on Monday about the snow makeups or the days next Monday would be great.
You mean the 16th?
No, we're
No,
meeting
the
next Monday.
second.
Yeah, I don't think we can do it before we meet with the teachers.
Well, they're
when
gonna
are we
meet.
They're gonna meet Wednesday.
They're gonna meet.
Wednesday.
That's a top priority.
I mean, I would think you might want to buy,
It's in
get
their
that.
best interest to figure it out also.
I think you want to get that PRS day back as soon as possible, which would give you, if you went that one Saturday.
They
No,
could take
I mean,
one
if
of
we
those
can-
bad high school dates, you know, March 28th or 4/11.
BU won the being hot.
Doc and I and Carl will be meeting on Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's gonna be an informal thing.
I mean, we have a sense now of what you folks would think, and it may be that if we are all in meeting of the minds, we
Right.
don't need to have a
Right.
more than
We don't have
that.
to have a formal sit down because, great.
Save some
If that
money.
can work out, then great.
Dr. Keller, do you still ever do the double sessions or no? You mentioned that once.
No, we can't do that anymore. Years ago, it was frequent in the early, the 50s and the 60s when schools were crowded and you couldn't build them fast enough. That was an option. But because now we have both a number of hours and a number of days, it doesn't work.
I just come up with other options.
There have been a lot of creative thoughts, but there's always Mitch. So.
Okay.
Motion?
Not yet, so real quick, assuming everything is on schedule, Liza and I are doing a couple PTOs on Wednesday. She's doing foster, I'm doing PRS, which have been rescheduled from a couple weeks ago. I think I mentioned it earlier, but for the middle school and the high school fields, we now have partial certificates of compliance from the Conservation Commission. So once the landscaping and grass is growing in and finished in the spring, we'll get the fulls and everything should be good. They can confirm the drainage works as it's supposed to work. We should be fine, so that's all good news. I don't know that there are other subcommittees.
Nope.
Okay. Then, yeah, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.